There's an awful lot going on, and it's an exciting time for gamers right now, with so much stuff happening between now and March. So many games that I've been stoked about for a long time now are just around the bend. Just over the last few weeks, we've gotten the remake for Resident Evil 2 and Kingdom Hearts 3, and in the few weeks to come, we're going to be getting Far Cry New Dawn, Metro Exodus, and Anthem, the latter of which I spent all weekend long playing, and I've got pretty mixed thoughts on it, so I'm probably going to put that out in a separate video. Even more exciting, if we look just a little bit further down the road into March, my own personal holy grail, Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice, will finally hit store shelves. And just a bit further than that will be Rage 2, one of the only Bethesda-published games that still holds any lasting appeal to me at all. All of these titles have a tremendous buzz about them, and are getting a ton of attention, deservingly so. But there are other things happening that are falling through the cracks because of them. Today I want to talk about one such game that is seeing movement, but not a lot of attention yet, and that is Subnautica Below Zero. If you haven't ever spent time with Subnautica from the studio Unknown Worlds, then I can confidently say that you've been missing out on one of the only titles of the recent past that has truly mastered what it means to generate a uniquely engaging atmosphere. On its face, Subnautica is a survival adventure game that takes place primarily under the surface of a gigantic ocean world. It does a lot of the standard survival gameplay mechanics very well, and even does a great deal of them masterfully. But what makes the game truly special is how the player feels as they explore the massive expanse that is Subnautica's map. Look, I get it, this is probably going to sound like made up marketing speak, but I am dead serious about it. There really is no other game quite like it. The devs have really tapped into the deepest, most primal parts of the player's brain as they work through the title. Lots of other games are capable of evoking a sense of wonder as you scan a wide open vista for the first time, and this really can be quite beautiful in games like God of War or The Witcher 3, but over time the player will naturally begin to take these worlds for granted, and they will become nothing more than a pretty backdrop to the gameplay. Subnautica's environment is special. Even the 100th time you find yourself exploring the early game shallows, swimming into caves to find minerals and chasing down random fish to create food will pique a curious fascination with your surroundings. It helps that the game's soundtrack meshes perfectly with its various locales, and it will ease you into a sort of joyful trance as you move over every hill and nautical feature these carefree areas possess. However, you're going to come to find pretty quickly that these fun, careless voyages through the shallows are not the normal experience you'll find as you progress through the game. As you move further out, and of course further down into the deep, your fanciful curiosity will be supplanted by piercing unease. Predators now lurk just out of sight. The light from the sun doesn't quite pierce the middling depths like it did further up, and now if you allow your greed and curiosity to take the reins, you'll find yourself lost in a twisting underwater cavern until lack of oxygen finally takes you, and your sight gradually darkens into blackness. This incessant, claustrophobic gambling as you decide whether or not going deeper is wise, whether or not you shouldn't just be happy with the materials that you've already gathered and take the safe bet. This is a defining trait of Subnautica that you won't find in your typical review or game description. If you still don't have a good picture, allow me to paint you one last one, because this is the one that I carry with me always when I think about this unique, beautifully terrifying game. You've delved into the deep a few times before. You aren't comfortable with it, but you know that there are some truly worthwhile rewards to offset the risks found in the blackest of depths. Maybe now you even have a piloted submersible that can ferry you further down than you could hope to travel on your own, but you have to get out to search the crags and cliffs of the black expanse. There's no natural light, so you have the sub's lights on pointing outwards in order to spot any unknown threat before it's too late. Down this far, the music is really just ambient noise, and all you can hear are the clicks of the creature skittering across the surfaces, or the crash of falling rock or metal from the nearby shipwreck. You're on high alert because every second you waste looking for danger is a second less of breathable air that you have for yourself. And because you've already seen large predators in other regions, you have learned that you aren't ever safe. This is the primal terror Subnautica is able of instilling, and it's mounting because you could have sworn you just saw something monumentally massive moving at the edge of your submersible's lights. Panic sets in, and you dash to get inside just as you hear a deafening roar and the rush of water break the deep silence of the abyss. You turn the sub to rise to the surface and you finally get a flash of the Leviathan as it circles, deciding whether or not to attack the sub itself. Terror of the deep, of the dark, of the unknown. These are the building blocks of Subnautica's success, and I promise you there isn't another experience quite like it available anywhere else. Never, even in actual horror games, have I felt instinctual fear so deeply to my core as I have in the deepest, unexplored reaches of Unknown World's masterpiece. Of course, many of you are familiar with what I'm talking about. The game's full release came last year after years of early development, and brought with it rave reviews for the final version of the game. However, even though I've spent all this time describing it, this is not a video about Subnautica. This is a video about its sequel, Below Zero. In the hubbub of the last few weeks, the early access debut of Below Zero was opened up for the price of $20 on Steam, Discord, and the Epic Games Store. It is by no means whatsoever a finished title, nor even remotely close to being one. It is an early access title in the purest sense of the term, just as its predecessor once was itself. The original game was one of the best imaginable examples of an early access game being developed correctly. It sat in that state year after year, being built on with regular updates as the developers secured funding and experience required to deliver a finished game. I played my minuscule part in that game's process by contributing minor bug reports, and partially because of that small contribution, it was incredibly fulfilling to see the game flourish into what it is today. I felt almost a part of it, and there are countless forums and 1,000 reviews across the internet that share that sentiment. Unknown Worlds is providing that opportunity all over again with its sequel, and I'm thrilled to find this to be the case. Before we go any further, I want to make it abundantly clear that if you buy this game now, you are absolutely not going to be getting a full game. As it stands, there are probably only 4 or 5 hours of actual story content in the first version, but with promises to take in feedback and release regular updates as soon as they're ready. What you get for that $20 is the chance to be a part of the development story, and the opportunity to play the game and its new content before it's ready. I'm not here to try and convince anyone to buy it now, not unless they are highly interested by what they see or want to be part of what I just described. The good news about all of this is that between the assets they already have from the first game and the experience they've picked up along the way, development promises to be a faster, more efficient process this time around. What they already have in Below Zero is either directly taken from Subnautica or a modified version of something we've previously seen. From what is new and already available, we are looking at the structure for the new map. Much of it is an empty sea now, but you can already tell that it's going to be massive. There are 3 biomes that are mostly developed now, as well as an island way out in the expanse that I'm not sure I was supposed to have found or not. As the name would imply, Below Zero is going to cover the Arctic regions of the planet, and you can see how this has and will impact everything from the biomes themselves, their creatures, the equipment you find and craft, and the story. Most of the equipment available to find right now is the stuff that we would have had around the midway point of the main game, minus any of the base building and piloted submersibles like the Seamoth or the Cyclops. I would imagine that stuff will be coming in hot anytime now, because for anyone who doesn't know, those are some of the most interesting hooks into the gameplay that hold promise to engage players. A lot of survival games have boring unlockables and gear that don't have a major impact on the way that you play the game or interact with the world, and that couldn't be further from the truth in Subnautica games. Getting your hands on a Seamoth, a propulsion cannon, or for God's sake a damned prawn suit completely changes the type of experience you're going to have. Naturally, the Arctic theme plays out on the inhabitants of the sea. Already there are a variety of Arctic themed versions of fish we've already seen, and also a hefty number of entirely new creatures, some surprisingly adorable and others ferocious and predatory. Of the new biomes I was able to explore, I like the aesthetics that separate these from the old ones, and I'm excited to see what they're like a month or 2 or even 3 from now. From a technical perspective, things can start looking a little bit dicey, but not unmanageable, keeping in mind that any roughness around the edges can instantly be chalked up to its early access status. This isn't a marketing strategy, it's a legit technical early access. Framerate is actually fairly stable. I was sitting between 45 and 60 most of the time on an 8700K and an aging 980 Ti. Textures aren't as detailed as they could or will be, and a lot of the animations of both your own actions and the surrounding sea life can get pretty wonky at times. The most hilariously out of place behavior I saw was when I got about 1.5 kilometers away from my little pod. I came across a barren stretch of sea where 20-ish fish were falling out of the sky, and several of the new catfish whale things were standing straight up half out of the water. But aside from that, most things were doing what they were supposed to. A great many of expected sliders and settings aren't available yet in the game. Those will come down the line as optimization becomes a focus. If we look back at how the original ran early on in its development, it was far worse than Below Zero, and today that game is gorgeous and immeasurably stable both on PC and in VR. For anyone who hasn't beaten the first one yet and has any interest at all in doing so, I'm not going to give up any spoilers here, so if you want to hear that story, then either play the game for yourself or look it up elsewhere. It really is pretty damned interesting and creative, so my emphatic recommendation is going to be just play it. From what I understand so far of the new story, it seems like Below Zero begins about a year after the events of the first game. This time you're going to be playing as Robin Goodall, a xenolinguist employed by the Altera Corporation. Your sister Sam Goodall gives you mission directives from aboard the Vesper, a research station in geosynchronous orbit around the planet. This is already a far sight from the events of the first game, because you are not alone and will be having regular contact with other humans, at least in the beginning. The research mission's primary goal is to learn more about the discoveries of the first game, which is already an interesting enough story to keep me going, because I was wildly into the plot of the first game and was already desperate for any more information about what we had found. Right now, in the first week of early access, there isn't a whole lot of scripted story in the game, but without a doubt it will be constantly drip-fed to us as the months move forward. Based on my 250 plus hours in the first game, I would bet a considerable amount on the quality this game's plot will grow into, even if they have abandoned the stark loneliness of the original. If you had literally zero knowledge or experience with the work this studio has produced, then looking in at Below Zero this early on in the process might be underwhelming. But through the lens of the completely unique experience Subnautica provides, I think instead we should start deciding on what colors to paint the hype train for when it inevitably starts rolling. Subnautica was the first major success that Unknown Worlds had, and now that they've built a reputation and base of experience, I am beyond excited to see what comes next. Whether you decide you want to support them early in this new venture or not, you should absolutely be following this game, checking in monthly to see the progress being made. I suspect it will be both rapid and sweeping, and the end result will be something you'll rabidly wish to take part in. Like I mentioned earlier, Below Zero is just a small part of all the excitement this spring brings for the gaming community. I'll put out a smallish video for Anthem prior to its release, and am working on a bigger, more expansive video for what I think of Resident Evil 2's remake. And of course, a massively disproportionate number of my subscribers come from my early Far Cry 5 content. So you already know I'm going to shill out for them when Far Cry New Dawn is released less than 10 days from now. I will say I'm cautiously apprehensive of that one. I love the idea that they're going to be progressing the story and characters from the last game, and building in some RPG elements, but at the same time I truly thought Assassin's Creed Odyssey was a soulless, boring behemoth, and deeply hope those traits haven't leaked into the Far Cry franchise. I suppose we're gonna find out really soon though. If you enjoyed this video, it's extremely helpful if you drop a like and hit that subscribe button. If you want to know first when any new content is released, then make sure you also press the notification bell. I can't tell you how grateful I am that you guys took a chance on a smaller channel like mine, especially with how many other fantastic channels are out there. I very much believe that the larger gaming publications are out of step with most of the community, and I think that YouTube provides a colossal role in fairly covering what goes on in our favorite industry. I'd love to talk with any of you about Subnautica, any of the other mentioned titles, or just gaming in general down in the comments below. So be sure to let me know what you think. One more time, a big heartfelt thank you to all of you, and I will catch you guys next time.